Welcome to Real Talk, live from the barn, a new show from visionary brand strategist Emilio Pardo. Today's guests are Dr. Christine Whelan, Dr. John Whyte, and Ann Herbster. We will be discussing small steps to making meaning in chaos. Thank you for joining us.
Hi there. Welcome to Real Talk live at the barn. My name is Emilio Pardo, and I am so glad you're here. This is a very special place, the barn. So 21 years ago, we built this barn for friends and family, for conversation, for playing, for listening to music, but then slowly and gradually became a place to have a conversation about how to get through life, how to get through the week, how to get through the day. So as you can see, it is filled with memorabilia of different places that we've been and where people have brought us some trinkets from all around the world. But the real magic of this barn is the conversations and the real talk we've had here and the answers that we have found to some of our greatest problems. You see, we're going to 3 pandemics: a COVID pandemic, an economic pandemic, and a racial injustice pandemic. All 3 of these are creating havoc on our mental strength, and we need real talk to find real answers. You see, I know about real talk. I'm a cancer survivor, pancreatic cancer, but I'm also a communications practitioner that has helped many companies and organizations find answers and solutions to their problems. Now, we want to open up this barn and have real talk and pair you up with experts that can help us find some answers and tips on how to get through the day and how to get through these pandemics. So, welcome, sit back, pull up a chair, and let's have a real conversation. Let's get started. And welcome. The barn is open for real talk. I am so glad that you're here and that you're giving us a little bit of your time among so many things that are happening in our lives today. Today we have a great show and a great gathering here at the barn. The barn is exploding with data, with insights, but more than anything else, with real talk about helping us with something that all of us are feeling. All of us are feeling some level of pain in these days of not just pandemic, racial injustice, and financial change for all of us in our lives. And, it's hard to imagine an issue that galvanizes all of our feelings into these feelings of, at times, uncertainty, at times a lot of stress, and frankly, and many times, and not knowing when this is all going to end. So today, the barn has been filled with people that actually are doing this kind of work 24/7. And we're so happy to have Dr. Christine Whelan from Madison, and a professor that you will soon find out. She's been actually on every show that we've had. It's been fabulous. And Dr. John Whyte, the one and only Chief Medical Officer for WebMD. If anybody knows where the data is, if everybody knows where the conversation is moving, is Dr. John Whyte. I'm so happy to have him here, and he's a dear friend. And then, of course, Ann Herbster, another dear friend who is a practitioner out here with us in Maryland, that has not only been in the front line of how to deal with the senior population and what they're going through, but also herself and her experience and what she has done in order to navigate the pandemics as we go through. So we have a lot to get through today. I can't wait to jam on the real talk, but there's something else that I want to stop for 1 second that I want to honor a moment. And it has to do with the sad news of the passing of Justice Ginsburg. And it is hard to imagine feeling this kind of grief on top of everything else that we're feeling. But Justice Ginsburg has been an icon for not just women's issues, but all issues having to do with equality and justice. And I just wanted to give a shout out. And by the way, I had the honor of sitting next to her at a dinner a while ago, and we changed a lot of things. We talked about other things. None of it was about work. It was all about where she was and where life was taking me, and she made it about me, not about her. And I just, it was a brief moment, but it's a moment that I will cherish forever. But anyway, thank you to all of you that have sent in a few of these comments, and my heart goes out to the family and to the family of all of those people that have lost their lives for COVID, which is why we're here today. Today is about how to find some meaning and happiness in the middle of chaos, right? All of us are feeling it. All of us are feeling this amount of stress, and frankly, there are two things that are really affecting how we think about it or how we deal with this amount of stress. And one of them is that you keep hearing this thing about new normal, and the reality is that the new normal is indefinite uncertainty, and that wreaks havoc on your systems and how to cope with it, whether it's happiness, whether it's peace, whether it's less stress. And so that's why we need to have a real conversation about how do we adjust our own model, right? How do we adjust ourselves to these pandemics? And how do we deal with the new normal that may not have answers for us, but the tips, the information, that's what I want to talk about today. So let's get on it. Let's bring on our first barn stormer, Dr. Christine Whelan. Christine, it's so good to see you. Welcome to the barn.
Thank you so much. It's so good to see you too, Emilio. This is really fun.
Yeah, listen, we have a lot to talk about, and the world here is waiting for some good conversation about where we are. But I wanted to go back a little bit. Where are we, Christine, in the middle of this search for meaning and chaos? What's your top view? Why are we feeling this way? And what is the pivot point that we can take to help people feel a little bit better about their journey and frankly, find some answers to their stress?
I mean, the first thing that I'm telling everyone right now is that you are not alone. You are not alone in feeling anxious and overwhelmed and unmoored, right? This is a time of huge uncertainty. And the things that we had previously counted on as being certain, whether it's where we're going to go to work during the day, whether our kids are going to go to school, all of that has been undermined in recent months. And even if we are not sick ourselves, there's this specter of illness around us, right? So first of all, you're not alone in your anxiety. But the other thing that's really interesting is that this focus on happiness, on put a happy face on things. I would say that really it's about finding meaning and purpose in the chaos. And there is a long history of this. So if we go back, the purpose of life was not to be happy. If we go back centuries and millennia, right? The purpose of life was to live a life of purpose. It was to suffer through the tough stuff because you knew why you were doing what you were doing. And so one of the things that I've really spent a lot of time talking to people about is trying to take a step back, acknowledging that we are not alone in our anxiety, and then saying, well, what is it that I want to do in this time? What am I here to do? What contribution can I make that will give me a little bit of meaning and structure to this otherwise chaotic time?
Yeah, the issue that I have is where are we as humans in that ecosystem? What has changed? Because it feels like, right? It feels like something has changed systemically about how we deal with this. And we need to understand that before we go any further.
Right. So, there are kind of two ways that that people can look at the world, right? So you can look at the world from an ego approach to the world, where you're focusing on me, right? And in that ego approach to the world, you see yourself as the king or queen of the hill, and everybody else is kind of below you or not as important as you.
I think you gave me a picture of this, Stephanie.
I did, yeah.
Because when I saw that picture, I thought, oh shoot, I totally get it. I understand where I am in the ecosystem, that I was frankly the head of it, and now all of a sudden I'm inside of it. I don't know, Steph, do you have that handy?
Right, because then there's the eco approach, right? And the eco approach to the world is the idea that you are interconnected with other people, right? That we are interconnected, that we are one with everybody, one with animals, one with all people, that we are in this interconnected web. And there's wonderful research from a sociologist named Jenny Crocker, a social psychologist named Jenny Crocker, and she talks about moving from the ego perspective to the eco perspective. So from the ego you to the eco you. And this actually is the sort of methodological base of the human ecological perspective that I study at the University of Wisconsin at Madison in the School of Human Ecology. And I've been saying to so many people, let's think about ourselves in this eco mindset, because then we can think about the we. And this we applies not just in terms of our health and in wanting good health for others, like you wear a mask to protect others, right? Because you're part of an ecosystem. But it also, when we think of all the racial injustice that we are finally seeing and that is coming to light, when we're seeing folks coming out for social justice and protesting, right? You stand as allies because you are part of the eco whole, not the ego, meaning me, I've always got to be right.
Yeah. How do we deal with that new ecosystem around us, that new world around us? Another word for eco, the world around us. Now we're part of the food chain of emotions.
Yeah, I mean, it is so one of the really interesting sort of evolutionary elements of this, right, is the way is we didn't evolve such that we weren't getting killed and chased by lions when all these animals were chasing us, right? We didn't get away not because we were stronger. We didn't get away because we were faster. We weren't. The reason why humans survived is because we came together in groups. And we became social creatures, right? And so the community was what kept us alive through our evolution. Now, right. The challenge now is that social community is also the thing that gives us this virus, right? So we're really unmoored because we're being sort of physically taken away from our social community at a time where we really do need that support. So coming together on shows like this, coming together with your loved ones to talk about ideas virtually outside, these are ways to kind of bring that emotional support and that meaning back to something that is really part of our evolutionary DNA, to be interconnected, to be this eco-you.
So, Christine, you've been working at this for a long time. Do you have a shortcut? Do you have anything that we can give our users here? You know how it always is, hey, give me a 5-minute shortcut on finding meaning and purpose.
Yes.
But doesn't it also start with your own view of your purpose and your internal purpose? Is there an easy way to do that?
It is. So first of all, there is no easy button. However, what we have found time and again is that if you break down a daunting task into small steps, then it can really become a kind of pleasurable exploration of possibilities. Yep. And so one of the things that you and I have been working on for years, Emilio, is this idea of trying to break down these big concepts into small steps. So this is the exercise that I have been running people through for the last 6 or so months. And I'm calling it a sort of pandemic purpose statement. And for this pandemic purpose statement, I'm encouraging people to think maybe not just for their whole life purpose, because that's a little bit daunting, but to think of even a daily purpose statement. And the way this goes is that I ask people to think about 5 questions. And for everybody who's watching and listening, you don't have to come up with them on the fly. I would just write them down and think about them later. So the first question is, what do you value? Yeah. And when we think about values, you want to think about the things that you actually value, right? Not things that you think you should value or that other people value, but what's really important to you. And again, it could be what's important to you just for tomorrow or today. Right. And then after that, think about your strengths. What are you good at? What are the things that you're good at and that you enjoy? Those are the strengths that you want to use, right? So then you list 3 of those. So you list 3 values, 3 strengths. Then you think about who are the people or the groups or the causes that you want to make a positive impact on. So who do you want to positively impact? and write down 3 of those. And I always encourage folks, yes, you can think about your family, but try to think a little bit outside that nuclear family as well. Who do you want to positively impact?
Mm-hmm.
But then in the last couple of years, I used to end it right there. But in the last couple of years, I realized in my own life, when things got real, that wasn't enough. So I wanted to anticipate the reasons why, the practical and emotional reasons why people often get tripped up on their path to purpose. And the emotional reason is that whenever we try to make a change, there are fears that come along for the ride. There are anxieties that rear their heads, right? So what are your fears and anxieties? What are the things that might hold you back from making any change? And if you name them and look at them and write down 3 of them, then that is a good first step to acknowledging what might get in the way. And then the final thing is the practical thing that often gets in our way is that we have lofty ideas, but we don't turn them into concrete, specific, measurable goals. Right. So what 3 purpose-based commitments might you make today to live toward that larger purpose statement? And when you put it all into you can put it all into a sort of Mad Libs purpose statement, right? So you put your name on the top, you put the date. If you want to do it as a daily thing, you certainly can. And you say, because I value, you put in your values. I'm going to use my gifts you put in your gifts to make a positive impact on, and then who you want to positively impact.
Give an example of a gift for folks.
Okay. So that on this next slide, you'll see that I actually have my own pandemic purpose statement right here.
Oh, there you go.
Right. So this is the one that I did just for today. Okay. Because I value relationships, perseverance, and creativity, I will use my gifts for translating research, making connections, and organization to positively impact the lives of my children, my students, and the broader public. All right, so my gifts are for translating research and making connections and organization. I've used them all today. But then I say, you know what? I accept my fears and anxieties about not being perfect enough, not being helpful enough, and fear about the future. All of these are true, and fear and anxieties, and still make conscious, purpose-based commitments to make a fun baked potato bar with my kids, to take a bike ride, which I did, and to check in with my students. And so this is, to me, what I love about this purpose statement is that it breaks it down into something that I can do in a day. So I encourage my kids to do this with me. We try to do it at breakfast. We try to do a purpose statement for our family. You can do it in the morning as sort of a morning meditation. You can do it in the evening for the next day. But if you think about it in these small steps and these small bites, it builds your sense of self-efficacy because you are empowered. You then get the sense that you can actually accomplish the things that you set out to do. And talk about, putting a little bit of purpose and structure in a time of uncertainty and chaos. I have found that this is a very helpful approach and one that has worked for a lot of other people as well.
I love it. I love it. And I love the fun baked potato bar tonight.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
What are you doing tonight?
Extra bacon.
Extra, of course. Bacon goes with everything. That is awesome. You see, this is simple. This is, I know a Mad Libs approach makes it practical, makes it simple. And that is a small step. And this is a huge, huge step. Thank you, Christine, because, we sometimes think about these tools in the abstract or academic. Yeah. This is real. This is a practical approach.
Right.
And I can totally understand, how we get overwhelmed by the multiple, things coming at us from the new American way of life. And we're experiencing that as we speak. It's the disappearance of the American lifestyle. Work, learning, shopping, relationships, you name it. And for that, we need to go someplace to find information, to find the reality of what is fact and what is not. Mm-hmm. And I cannot think of a better place. And as you all know, the place that I know I go to 24/7, and I went through when I was going through my own physical challenges with cancer, and that is WebMD. And I want to bring John in. John hasn't actually ever been to the barn except for today, which is awesome. Dr. John Whyte, Chief Medical Officer for WebMD. Prior to that, he was Chief Medical Officer at Discovery Communications. Prior to that, he was at the FDA, of all places, dealing exactly with the issues that we're dealing with today. John, Welcome, welcome, welcome to the barn. I'm so happy to see you.
Well, thank you for having me. We've known each other for now almost 19 years.
Incredible. And I have to
The
tell
barn someday.
you, and I got to tell you, John has been there for me. That's the other thing too, Christine, is never go at this alone, right?
Okay.
So let's keep going. So now we have a purpose statement. By the way, the key here is to try to find, and that's what we're going to do through the barn, is to find the best inexpensive shortcuts to some of our answers. And I want to point out one thing. I picked this up at the grocery store. I think we have a picture of this. This is a new edition from Time Magazine's The Science of Happiness, and it's $14.99. But it's a treasure trove of techniques, the science of happiness, the concept that we all are looking for is how do we get there. But John, no, this is not the slide, so we can come back to this one. But John, let's go to where you are. What is going on out there? What are you seeing? What are people searching for? And how would you help us with deciphering fact versus not?
Yeah. And, we've been getting just on COVID about 3 million, views a day. And, people are concerned. They're concerned about reopening. They're concerned about reinfection. Everything that's in the news, you'll see that's what people search. But, Amelia, the other thing that I was struck by is that search for anxiety and anxiety medications, particularly, are 7 times in the past 3 months this year than they were last year. And, this goes to, Dr. Whelan's point is, there's lots of other things that we can do as well. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, take medicines, but we need to have that 360-degree approach towards acknowledging our fear. We've been talking about many folks are just having PTSD as well. They really can't function. So how do we help them do that? But that's what we're really seeing, issues of anxiety, issues of loneliness, how to deal with these issues, the concern about suicide, which was rising pre-COVID. So it's really about, acknowledging one's feelings, reaching out for help. And something that you and I have discussed over the past 19 years really is this recognition that we haven't always had, that the mind and body are connected. And we really can use science. You pull up the picture that talks about the science, and that's what Dr. Whelan talks about the connection. We're not just making stuff up. It's based on science, and I think that's important.
That is so true. What about you? How are you dealing with this? I mean, you have an amazing responsibility. Your show in the WebMD ecosystem is amazing. You have interviewed every single important person that relates to COVID. But how are you dealing with the onslaught of stress and your own purpose?
Well, thank you. I have been interviewing a lot of people, over 200, and now I am thinking about some others that you're having on the show today. But, for me, in some ways, I joke half-heartedly that because I'm so busy, in some ways, I don't think as much about what's going on and how it's impacting my daily life. But something that, others have talked about, and you and I know this, I try to focus on the positive. So it sounds weird, but in some ways a blessing for me, and we don't use the word blessing much with COVID, with 200,000 people dead, millions of people, impacted, is I traveled a lot for work. Now I don't. Since March, I've been home every single day and have had basically breakfast, lunch, and dinner, with my children, every single day, and have been home at night. And I haven't had that in a very long time. So Amelia, I try to focus on the positive aspects as a result of this. Otherwise, you can just completely get lost in, all the negativity around it. So that's one of the ways that, I've been focused on, what's positive about this? What have I had the opportunity to do that I otherwise would not have done?
That is so huge. If there's one major thing that we can leave our fellow listeners to, is staying positive and getting out of yourself and finding that positivity on a minute by minute basis is huge. I know that's what helped me get through it.
Sure.
make it through it. But that's wonderful, Dr. Whyte. Listen, let's go there for a little bit.
Mhm.
I want to bring in Ann to this conversation. Ann Herbster is a Marylander. She lives here in Maryland. She is a communications crisis practitioner. She is the chair of the local town here, Rockville, Maryland Citizens, the Senior Citizens Commission, which has a lot of really interesting work. And by the way, that is a whole nother show that we can talk about what is happening to our seniors in America today. It is, John, I talked to the folks at AARP, and it is an unsolvable problem in the area of rest centers and rehabilitation centers. That is hard, and the work that you're doing, Anne, is wonderful, and we really appreciate it. Also, a fellow AARPer and Life Reimagined. Anne, welcome to the barn. And
thank you.
To the barn.
I wish I was there physically. I think I've been there. I love it. It's a wonderful place to hang out. It's a great place to just sit back and think about things. So thank you for having me, and I'm excited to be here.
So tell me, you have Dr. Whyte, you have Dr. Whelan. They're there for you, but tell me about what you've been working on real quick, and what are you finding that is helpful to tell our guests?
Yeah. And the timing for this is perfect because this past week we held a senior forum with the Rockville senior citizens, and our primary focus was to ask them, what are your needs? What are your challenges? What are the things that you're really struggling with right now? And they were very open and honest, and it was gut-wrenching when you heard some of the things that they have this fear of never being able to go out. This isolation is really genuine, that they are struggling with loss of seeing, this was interesting, loss of seeing a face. That it's not just Zoom. Many of them, they can't figure out Zoom. We had people call in because I can't figure this out. I don't know how to do this. And they can't see their friends, they can't see their families, their loved ones are going into the hospital, they can't go see them. So this is really having some really challenging dynamics. And then what's also interesting is that when you think about this, I don't think it's just the seniors that are struggling with this. I think that a lot of us are struggling. Christine talked about this, in terms of, I loved your idea of this eco, that it being interconnected, and that we all need to care for each other. We need to care about each other at a very different level. It just can't be, I'll stop in and see mom or dad, or I'll stop in and see my friends. You can't do that anymore. That's just, at least in the short term, we're not able to do that. So there's some really challenging times right now.
So what are you finding? What has helped? Do you have an idea?
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you from what we're hearing in the senior citizens and what we're hearing from my family, I can share some real experiences. We started game night, and we have a very large family, 30 some of us. That's just, siblings and their kids and their kids. And we started Trivial Pursuit, and it's pretty, you all have to have it. You don't all have to have Trivial Pursuit. Somebody masters it. Mm-hmm. So we started a game night, and my daughter has been in New Zealand this past year. She had some of the people she was with, they were participating. And, it was great because we were laughing, we were having fun, we were interacting. So that's one thing. The other thing is we do regular Zoom meetings. And what I found is I had to help a couple of them get set up, some of the older relatives, because, they're struggling with this. But once they got it, they were able to, I think, make it come together, which I thought was really, really helpful. I think the other thing is we have to use our phone more, guys. We have to pick up the phone. We have to call people. We have to check in on them. And it's not just friends and family. If you have friends or know of somebody, pick up the phone. How are you doing? What do you need? Can I help? Even just having that conversation is so powerful and so helpful, I think, for people, just to make them feel that they're wanted, make them feel that they're not alone. We've talked about fear and isolation a lot, and that is real. It is really a challenge.
So you have a bunch of stuff here that you done, and lots of friendships. These are all the actual drivers of how you're feeling. And to John's, Dr. Whyte's point earlier, it's a 360 around your life, and that is different. When you have a catastrophe like a tornado or a hurricane. There's an enormous amount of fear pre-hurricane. There's the getting through the hurricane and the fear of fight and flight and try to get through it. But then it goes away. You got the respite of the loss, and it goes away. This is not going away.
Right.
You are surrounded by uncertainty, and we hope that it's soon, right? I mean, Dr. Whyte has probably got a better line in this as to when the vaccines are coming in. But from a real talk point of view, we got to get out of thinking that it's going to be back to normal anytime soon. And that lack of human touch that you're talking about I think is critical to it. Have you found things or tips that you are doing that actually are working for you, or that you're seeing out there?
So for us, what we're seeing is the senior center is went to virtual exercise, virtual fitness classes. And we're finding that this is something we're going to continue. And here's an example. 30 people could show up in a class. We now have 80 to 100 people online in a fitness class. I mean, that's really incredible. So we've got to get the word out. And that, I think, is a big challenge. How do you get the word out that there are opportunities? How do you tell people that there's a way to connect? I think that if we could if we could crack that nut, I think that we could move things along.
That's awesome. Now, I'll ask you the same question, Ann. How are you doing? I mean, you're right there in the middle. How have you dealt with it? You're a single mom. You have a great daughter that graduated from college and it's out there in the world. How are you dealing with a bubble?
So I found a period that I think I'm over that hump. And I love what Christine talked about is coming up with your message. And for me, it was thinking about the things that I could do and how could I be more proactive. I will admit it, there were times it was a struggle. My daughter's been gone for a year, and that's been a struggle, though she's been in a safe place. And we've managed to, I go up and see my dad, but I always, I have to make sure that I protect myself. We have family members who have been on the front line, and thank God they've been safe. So for me, it's checking in with friends and keep doing Zoom, and I get to play golf. So I've got a couple outlets, and I've been lucky that I have those outlets. There are people that don't have those outlets, and we've got to find a way to help them find a way to get out and to overcome this.
So Dr. Whyte, how does this sound to what you're hearing out there, what people are trying to do to get some kind of control over what their mental stability is? Purpose.
In Canada, they use the term physical distancing from the very beginning rather than the word social distancing. And I think it's more than just, those words, because in many ways, we just simply isolated ourselves from everyone. I agree with Ann's point about, technology. It's not a complete substitute, but it's something. And, what I found, even with my own mother, it takes a little bit of hand-holding at first in terms of coaxing them how to do it. And then what I found is to do it fairly often, at the beginning, so people get used to it. And I really encourage that for folks. I love Dan's point, though, I have to say, with calling people, I think it's somewhat generational. Younger people don't answer their phone. And heaven forbid if someone texts you and you call them, it's like, what are you doing? You have to stay in the same medium. But the point is, we have to make more of an effort. We have to reach out, and that can be challenging when at times you're overwhelmed. But it's in terms of some people, I think it's going to end in a few weeks. It's not. Even with a vaccine, most of the legitimate timelines are that it won't be widely available until sometime mid next year. And even then, it doesn't mean everyone will get it. So how do we live with the virus while managing risk, particularly protecting those that are most vulnerable? And one of the lines that I've been using a lot, Emilio, is how do we stay sane while we stay safe? And that's really what folks are discussing today.
I love that, staying sane while staying safe. That's a great frame to think about it. But let's do this. Let me put something up and let's all riff on this list. There's I did a quick search on the science of happiness and what Dr. Whelan's work is. And Stefan, I have a few tips here that I would love for you guys to let's all riff on these, because these come really researched everything here that Dr. Whelan can tell you. My first one I love, splurge on up for experiences, not things. That's a big change, right? I'm a big shopper. I used to love to go shopping, but shopping for an experience, like, somehow a gathering, maybe it's cutting a cake with only 5 people, but expending money and time on experiences that you're going to find some meaning to, and actually memories. Christine, are you seeing that? Are you seeing that shift in that one?
Well, so first of all, this is something that's been hugely researched. So there are these 2 researchers, Elizabeth Dunn and Michael Norton, up in Canada, and they've done this worldwide research that if you give people $20 and then tell them to spend it on themselves or spend it in a pro-social way on other people, and potentially including themselves as well, like taking someone out to lunch, the people who spend it on an experience and in a pro-social way tend to be happier than the people who go and buy a thing for themselves. And I don't know about you, but I can tell you all of my experiences get better over time, because every time I tell the story, like, it gets more and more fabulous. And with a thing, that doesn't work so well, right?
Yeah.
So tired of things, but experiences grow in their fabulousness. So yes, there is a lot of research on this. But by the way, this is harder to do now than before. So we have to be a little bit more creative, and people have done some wonderfully creative things. I can tell you one thing that I have learned about this experiences and things and in a pandemic. I think you have to really embrace the experience of the pandemic for what it is, and not try to kind of do things like you normally would, but like halfway. I have found that the times that I've like tried to plow on and ignore the fact that there's a pandemic and just, put in some safety precautions, but otherwise just try to go ahead, those have been the toughest times. But when you embrace the idea that, things have to be entirely different to make this experience fun and worthwhile, and put some time thinking about how you can do something totally different, that's when it really works.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, making hard stuff work, Dr. Whyte. This is even closer to your world of, when people, there's a lot of research now that is showing that even when you go through traumatic stuff, heaven forbid, something like breast cancer, on the other end of that survival, there is a new sense of what is real, what is important, what is meaningful to you, and almost your sense of timing begins to change. I know that's what I experience. What are you seeing out there as it relates to that?
Absolutely. It's also when, you accomplish a task that was hard, you have much more satisfaction than if it was easy. You remember those sporting events where you might have come from behind and no one expected you to win. It's the same in the other aspects of our life. None of us are going to forget this year, by any means. But in some ways, how do we have this resilience? And I think sometimes we learn that from kids as well. We don't take anything too seriously. We figure other strategies, for happiness. But you're right, in terms of making those things work that are hard is really a key strategy, through this pandemic. Because remember, we're having a mental health pandemic as well as an infectious disease pandemic. And the mental health pandemic is going to continue, past once we, get through this stage. So we really need to be developing these coping mechanisms, these strategies, for happiness now.
Yeah, very, very well said. The next one is, I have to tell you, it was a favorite one that I found. I don't know if you guys have seen this or not. Try a tearjerker movie. Get through it. I call it The Purge. A friend of mine sent me The Notebook. Oh my God. Talk about going through a journey of emotion, but there's something to that, right? I mean, there's something about purging and going deep and then at the end of it, the studies show that actually you'll feel happier after watching the movie. And I found that kind of interesting because we can all do that now. We're stuck inside and we can watch these movies, but it doesn't have to be a tearjerker. It just can be a nice emotional flick.
But Emilio, can I add something? Because I think this is really powerful, but it's a little bit bigger than just the tearjerker idea. And that is, be open to telling people how you feel and be open to asking for help. And I think that's really hard for people, that they struggle with that. And that if we could get people to say, reach out and tell people you're struggling. Reach out and say, hey, could we just get together once a week and talk? Or can we just gather across, 6 feet apart from each other, and have that conversation? So at least I'm getting to see you with your mask on. That to me, I think, is as powerful as letting your emotions come out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Fake it till you feel it. I don't know if you ever heard of this one before, but I love this one, right? This is about smiling in the middle of something really hard. And just keep smiling until you feel that. Christine or Dr. Whyte, have you guys seen that also out there?
Oh, there's great research on this. So there's this funny little research that says that if you hold a pencil between your teeth, you have to hold it between here. Let me do it. I'm going to do it for you here. All right. So if you hold a pencil,
okay,
like this between your teeth,
yeah,
you're forcing a smile. And research shows that if you give people a pencil to put in front of their teeth, they will find the cartoon that you put in front of them funnier. They will find everything funnier if you just make it till you make it. And that's the sort of the sillier research. But I have to say, I don't mean to make light of, because I think actually the try it tearjerker and fake it till you make it kind of that they go together. Because it is really important to talk honestly about your emotions. Yeah. And then it's equally important to try to take some small steps, whether you feel like doing it or not, to get out of those depression and anxiety feelings as much as you can. And you may need the help of others to do that. You may need the help of medicine. You may need all sorts of help to do that. But to take some of that concrete action. When I was in my 20s, I remembered that I would volunteer with children at a foster care center, and when I would go into the center and I would be all wrapped up in my own stuff, in my own dramas, and I would be very anxious, and I would come out calmer, more centered, and feeling better because I had let my own stuff put to the side, and I had done something for someone else. I had lost myself in the lives of others for a while. And that's really, really powerful in this. Mm-hmm. So to come outside yourself and to smile for others, and even if it involves a pencil.
And I love the pencil. That's why the barn is the barn, right? I mean, I feel good.
Oh, by the way, but you have to do it between your teeth, because if you do it between your lips,
okay.
You frown.
I can keep it. All of us can do the pencil trick. Number 5, we all know nobody makes you happy, but you know what? There's a twist on this one.
Yeah.
And let me offer a little twist. And the research bears this out. Go back to your 20, when you were saying you're 20 years old, Dr. Whelan, and the things that you used to do back then that gave you such freedom and such joy. Let me give you one of mine. When I first got my car at age 16, the thing that got me so amazing is put all the windows down. And I had a sunroof. I was lucky enough to get a sunroof on my first car, and just drive and let the wind and put my hand out the window. That moment today is immeasurable on how good it feels. And I did it the other day. And those are the things that no one makes you happy. Do them again. And usually you got to go back to your childhood a little bit, but definitely it's there. Let's go to the next one real quick. The next, think less of me, more. We talked. Anne just talked about that.
Yeah.
Whyte has talked about that. Right. That's important. We've talked about friends and family as not only a tool, but all the research says that the more that now in this moment of loss, anger, disappointment, uncertainty, and lack of clarity, friends and connection, don't go at it alone. Listen to Anne. Pick up the phone. But if nothing else, I know Zoom can be, annoying at times, but at least you're seeing someone. By the way, 70% of communication anywhere in the world is nonverbal. Mm-hmm. So if you're not able to be and see the nonverbals, your expression in your face, when getting the pencil in, you are losing 70% of that communication. Yeah. And your tone and what you say is only 17%, the actual word. So you got to keep that in mind as we go outside. And then to get practical, and this is something that Dr. Whyte has done in his show, that you have done in yours, in your work, and Anne just reminded us a little bit. Number 8, I think, is really important. These are real practical. And I know they sound like common sense, but it's about common practice. Sleep. Huge. And you guys can talk about these. Get outside. I think that's the biggest one nowadays. Being able to get outside, get some fresh air, exercise, stand up straight. I know that sounds kind of hokey, but there's a lot of energy that goes from your torso into your body when you sit up straight. And smile, eat more fish. I don't know where that one came from, but maybe I can figure that one out. I hate fish. So what do you guys think of this one?
It's absolutely true. What's interesting though, Emilio, one of the feedback we got this past week is people are nervous because they've been able to get out. They're trying to exercise. Cold weather's coming in for those of us in the north, in the mid-Atlantic, and they're really nervous, like, well, I won't be able to do that because there's this fear of falling and fear of getting hurt. So we've got to, if we could find more virtual exercising where people could either watch it on TV, watch it on their computers, things like that, we need to encourage people to move inside, to still be safe, and then still get their exercise.
Dr. Whyte, what is the latest conversation and narrative of mindfulness? I know it's been a big trend in America for the last 15 years, but is that getting to the forefront now, or is it still the same?
Yeah. It's interesting you say it's for the last 15 years, and the reality is it's probably been a millennium. But but the reason why I was going to say is I think in the medical community, and I'm probably biased because of that, we really have only started to pay attention to it, in the last few years. I think other disciplines, the social sciences, have done a much better job of recognizing that mind-body connection. But I've been talking to a lot of patients. I still see patients, about mindfulness. People, have a lot of misperceptions about it, and think it's, you're going to be sitting like a Buddhist monk and doing an and it's not that. So I find, especially with a lot of apps nowadays that help guide people through mindfulness, it's really something that people are embracing, and now more than ever, I think they can benefit from it. And just one other point quickly about exercise: none of us regret after we've been physically active, right? We make lots of excuses, and I'll be honest, I make excuses because I'm like, oh, I have to do an interview. I can't, I get too sweaty. I don't have time to change. I don't want to be, panting. So I've really had to make an effort, to build that into my day. But for mindfulness, I'd love to hear Dr. Whelan's points as well. I think in general, the medical community hasn't done a good enough job to embrace it, but I think we're starting to make up for it now. And I think technology actually is helping in a weird sort of way when you think about it, but it's helping guide some people who really don't understand how to do it.
Yeah, and I think so meditation, again, as you said, has this idea that you have to be in the lotus position and sitting still. You don't. And so there are walking meditations. There are, just the idea of getting outside, walking around, but instead of listening to something else or talking on your phone, to look around, to try to notice the sights and the smells. Those are meditations as well. And
prayer also meditation, Dr. Whelan? Prayer.
And prayer is one. Yes, of course, prayer is a meditation. And this is why this idea that some people have this misnomer that meditation is a Buddhist practice. It's certainly not. Every major religion has a meditative and prayer quality to it. And now there are all sorts of apps where they're taking you through these kinds of things. I have a Catholic one. I have the Hallow app. Now that is taking me through a Catholic meditation program. But you can also really just do this yourself by getting out there and trying to notice all of your senses as you walk. Feel your feet as you're walking in the grass. These are very powerful ways of getting in touch with yourself.
And by the way, these are things that you don't need money for.
Right. Yep.
And that's one of the questions that we have here coming on in from Facebook that I wanted to share with you from one of our listeners. And the question is, how do I deal when I just don't have enough money to make it to Friday? And that's real, guys. I mean, I have family, I have friends that have been laid off, that are struggling,
Yeah.
that don't have enough money to really do what they need to do, even for food. Look at the food lines. So I think that is, to Dr. Whyte's point, the pandemic that will last for a while and probably more intense is the mental pandemic that we're seeing. But maybe we can say a few words about that, Dr. Whelan and Dr. Whyte. How are you dealing with it? Because I know you see it every day at WebMD. You have these comments coming in of people that are desperate. Everything that we're talking about here today, you don't need money for, right? This is why we want to get to as many people as possible.
Well, we want to encourage people to get help and to reach out, and that can be, help through professionals, help through loved ones. There's a lot of what's called telepsychiatry, going on now, and other, health providers. So it is acknowledging one's feelings, and it's to your point, Emilio. It's the reality of how do I maintain some sort of happiness when I'm having trouble putting food on the table and taking care of my family. And that's a real concern. In many ways, that's also where we want people to acknowledge it. It's not their fault. They don't have responsibility, for the pandemic. But then how do we help find the right resources for them to help them get through the day? And sometimes it's about just trying to help them think through, how do I get through today and dealing with tomorrow later? I don't know if Dr. Whelan and Anne, have the same approach.
Absolutely. And I think, and really early on in the pandemic, I got really kind of irritated with folks who said, well, now it's a great time. Now's the time you have to figure out your purpose in life. You have to figure out your meaning. And now's a good time to, do self-help. When I thought that's rather tone deaf. There are a lot of people, whether they're essential workers, whether they're folks who were laid off, there are people who are just trying to make ends meet. And that itself is purposeful. Trying to put food on the table, trying to get your family through another day. That is incredibly purposeful, meaningful action right then and there. So for me, I'm trying to encourage people to acknowledge what they're already doing and to feel good about what they're already doing, because all too often we beat ourselves up for not being enough, and that compounds the anxiety and depression and mental health challenges, right? So to help people see that they are that they're coping as best they can in a very difficult situation, and to try not to put too many other to-dos on their plate until they seek them out. I think that is that's usually my line. You are enough. It's okay. You're not alone.
Now, this is a huge point, guys. And I don't know if, Anne, you feel this too. It's the concept of expecting less of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to expect less of yourself during these horrific times. And
to talk to that person who said that they're really struggling, I think that now is the time people need to be open and receptive to help. And that there are resources out there within the community, both within perhaps the city they live in, or the county, or the state. There are food banks. There are other support mechanisms that are in place that can help them both financially and what other needs they might have. So I encourage people to be open and receptive to the needs. And I think that's part of what sometimes people do. They dig themselves in so deep that they can't get out. And it's okay to reach out and say, I need help. And, perhaps it's a challenge finding help. I would start with your local city and state and county and see if they've got resources.
Yeah. And we will make some of that available also on the website and as follow-up to folks, because that's where you need is the resources. But the other thing that I want to do real quick, and this is a personal one. If we can do a lightning round here, and I want to bring our intrepid producer to the table here, Steph. Say hi to everybody. Hey, everybody, there's hi. Our amazing producer.
Hello, everyone.
He keeps us going, and
Dr. Whyte.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see everybody.
So we have only a few minutes, and I want to reinforce that we've covered so much here. There are a lot of tips here. Share this broadcast with people and let us know what we need to do next. We have been requested through online that we do a show on work and the disappearance of work as we know it today. And we're going to do that. We're going to have an amazing collection. We're working with the Labor Department to get a spokesperson to talk to us about what is really happening with the future of work. But I wanted to do a lightning round real quick on what are you guys doing personally to find these moments of purpose or happiness. We saw Dr. Whelan's purpose statement, which is awesome, and that Matt Libs approach really works. But let's do a lightning round. We'll start with you, Anne. What are you doing?
So I've been very focused on my volunteer work, which I didn't have the opportunity to do when I was working. And so both really trying to work with the Senior Citizens Commission, and I have another nonprofit that's focusing on the village ideas, which is neighbors helping neighbors, and really trying to work with small local groups to take the experiences and the knowledge that I have from all that time at AARP and working within the senior world, and how can I put that to application? How can I put that to practice?
Awesome. Dr. Whyte?
Well, this is real talk, Emilio, so you might have noticed I lost connection.
Yeah, that's all that. That was awesome.
So you might have to ask the question again and maybe go to Dr. Whelan, but I missed that last part.
No, yeah, we're talking about what is the one thing that you're doing or have done that has brought you a little bit of happiness and more purpose.
Oh, sure. So for me, it talks about, the show that you referenced where I'm interviewing people every day. And, I'm very proud of what we're trying to do at WebMD is to put it all into context and provide people the best information, to separate fact from fiction. Where can they go for credible information? So that gives me, a lot of pride, and it really goes to your sense of purpose. Again, in some ways, I'm looking at it in a positive way. We're working at all these hours, but at the end of the day, I'm hopefully impacting people's lives in ways that I may not have been able to do, pre-COVID. So
it's amazing, John. Tell everybody the name of your show.
It's called Coronavirus in Context, and you can go to WebMD and you'll find it there. We also promote it on all our social media platforms.
It's amazing, by the way, guys. I've had the pleasure of not only watching a bunch of those, but watching John put this together, and that's amazing. Dr. Whelan, I know you got something other than your pandemic statement.
I do. Well, so since it's real talk, I'm going to tell you that one of the things that I had to do over the last couple months, I love teaching. And I teach 120 college students at UW-Madison. And I teach in person. And I really love teaching in person. But this semester and the next semester as well, I can't. It's too big of a class. So I've got to teach online. So what I have done is I have kind of built a little mini TV studio in my office and started putting together these lectures that are far higher production value than is probably necessary for a college course.
Wow.
But I've had a lot of fun with them, and I've put my heart and soul into them. And just yesterday, I got an email from one of my students who said, "Your lectures are keeping me afloat right now. Thank you so much. This is really making a difference." And her email really made a difference to me. Because, this is one of the things out there, all of you guys are doing such wonderful work. And to have people recognize the work that you're doing and to say thank you. And so for all of us, we all need to reach out and say thank you to the people who are positively impacting us. And this student really positively impacted me, and I'm trying to keep doing it with others.
That is awesome. Thank you, guys. Steph, what are you doing to stay sane?
I want to touch on three things here that have been said in overall. One is, let's talk about the walking meditation that Christine talked about. I'm somebody who I can't sit still very long. I think most of you know that by now from me. I'm pretty energized most of the time. I find walking on nature trails to be my way of relaxing. Nothing does it for me more than that. I mean, I could just walk through the woods for hours and just enjoying the peace and quiet. To me, that is my walking meditation. Second of all, what Christine said about finding purpose in what we're doing. This is a tough time. Yeah, we're all working as hard or possibly harder than we've ever worked before because we're at home. And I think many companies have realized that they actually get more productivity out of people when they're home because you tend not to cut it off at a certain time. And if you're as hardworking as most of us are, you put your all into it all the time. So for me, it's also what John, to touch on what Dr. Whyte said, is that putting great information out there. I mean, Dr. Whyte is putting the information out there, but me being able to help people such as yourselves produce shows like this, that gives me a lot of meaning and a lot of purpose because I'm helping get this information out there and in a very, new way with all the live streaming and multimedia productions. So that's another thing I wanted to touch on. So all of that is what's keeping me happy and going.
That's great. Well, for me, by the way, it's outside. The more that I can
Right.
do anything outside gives me at least a little moment of respite. But also to Dr. Whelan and Dr. Whyte, I mean, you guys are doing it out there, and putting shows like this to me has been a blessing because not only am I learning every single day, but I'm also helping. And my purpose statement that I still have a little sticker, grow and give, from Richard Leiter. I try to grow every day in the best way and learn and to give something of myself to others. But I can't tell you how much I appreciate. Speaking of item number 5 on the list, of saying thank you. This show can go on for another 5 hours. We're up on time. And I just want to say thank you, Dr. Whyte. You are not only a dear friend, but you're an inspiration to people in America. Keep it up. We're watching you every day on that end. Dr. Whelan, I love the work that you're doing. It's no wonder people want you back every time we do a show. They so sorry about that. And Anne, I've known you for so long, and you're doing such wonderful work. And you yourself are an inspiration. Your attitude about life and the way that you're bringing it together. And Steph, thank you too. But all of you, it's been wonderful. It's been real. Definitely, it's been real.
I wanted to add one thing, if I can. Everybody should know to follow Emilio at PartoVision on Twitter. Yep. Follow Dr. John Whyte at Dr. John Whyte. That's pretty straightforward. Follow Christine Whelan, Dr. Christine Whelan at Christine Whelan on Twitter. And be sure to check out Anne, too. You can find Anne at Ann Herbster Associates, LLC, at aherbsterassociate.com.
Absolutely. And like I said, look out for the next announcement for the next show. It will be on the end of work as we know it today. And that all of us are dealing with and changing. And it'll be here by popular demand. But have a great Sunday night. Enjoy it. Thank you. I am so happy to see you guys. And fake it until you make it.
Amen.
Thank you.
Take
care.
Have a good night, everybody.
Night, everybody. Thanks. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.